Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast, your home for inspiring conversations with outdoor insiders. Each week, author, speaker, adventurer, and outdoor industry veteran Rick Saez talks in depth with iconic brand founders, sales and marketing pros, product designers, and industry rising stars. Listen in when Rick's guests offer actionable advice to land your ideal industry gig and grow your outdoor career. Catch us again when the conversation shifts to the hottest outdoor products, destinations, and the latest industry insights. And now, here's Rick.
Welcome to episode 265 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. We're talking with acclaimed photographer, filmmaker Corey Rich, brought to you this month by Wolfgang Man and Beast. Corey Rich says that long ago he learned the technical part of any job is 10%. Creativity, problem solving, optimism, and surrounding yourself with intelligent, hardworking people is the remaining 90%. When you know how to be creative and assemble the right team, that's when all the great things come. We talk about how he grew his photo career into prolific creative photo and video offerings that grace much of the media we've been drooling over for the past 20 plus years. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's really great to catch up. It's been too long.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I was trying to think. I think the last time we were together was one of the events in Jackson where we were, I forget what it was. It was either one of those workshops or we were doing a product thing. I don't remember. But
yeah, it might have been one of the Summit Adventure workshops, which
sadly,
I'll admit, they're still thriving. But every year I intend to be there and get pulled away for an assignment.
Well, you're still the global traveler from little that I can follow you on. You're all over the place. We'll talk a little bit about that.
I would say that's true up until, I guess, March of 2020,
right, when
the pandemic hit. And I've, like many people, I think a lot of our lives really changed and evolved during the pandemic over the last roughly year.
Oh man, yeah.
And for me, I was doing a book tour. I had a book come out in the fall of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a book tour early 2020. And I remember my last stop was in New York City. And it was as the world was wrapping their heads around, what does COVID-19 mean? And I remember I was staying at like a Marriott property. And I remember I did a quick workout in the morning and then I jumped in a cab to go to the airport. And I remember talking to my wife and she said, why don't you stop at a CVS and get like hand sanitizer and a mask? And of course I'm in New York City and I stopped at a CVS and there wasn't a hand sanitizer in sight or a mask.
Right.
And I got on like my last flight back to Reno, Nevada to come home to Tahoe. And except for one excursion over the last 12 months, I've all but been home.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've done a few driving assignments, but my world's really evolved. My business went from, traveling 200 plus days a year and either directing in person or depressing the shutter in person to tons of remote directing and creative consulting, a few shoots where we gathered a crew when it felt safe and took all of the COVID protocols. And it's been, I have to admit, this may be the first time I'm admitting it out loud, but certainly in public, it's been like the most fantastic year of my life to be home and have
with
a routine.
Family. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. My 7.5-year-old daughter, Layla, she wakes up.
7.5. How'd that happen? I think she was like 2 last time I saw her.
Yeah. No kidding.
That's great.
But it's been pretty amazing, Rick, she wakes up and I'm at the house unless I'm out ski touring or riding my bike.
Right.
And, I'm home when she goes to bed. And I don't know, I can't say that there's been a single moment where I felt this burning desire to get back on a plane and do a complicated sequence of travel to some remote place during this year. And I think when it turns on again, I'll be just as excited as I used to be to explore the open road and be out there. But I am soaking in every minute of being at home. And
I would be doing the same. Yeah, I would be doing the same. And we've all had, like you said, we've all been impacted by it in our own. I used to travel a fair amount too. Not so much since I came back to Bishop and settled into the work I'm doing now, like you, on the road hundreds of days a year. And it changes you. And it really, I think, creates an adventure wanderlust in you that you look forward to. But then when it stops, I'm the same. You know what? This is cool hanging out here in Bishop and doing the podcast and getting to explore some of the area and stuff. Yeah, it changes us.
Yeah. I would say the only missing piece that's been a little hard is here I am hanging out in South Lake Tahoe and certainly getting plenty of recreation, but the hanging out with friends has been a lot harder because of COVID. I have two elderly parents that live nearby, and they're definitely cautious around. I wouldn't say we're on the extreme side of caution with COVID, but we're somewhere right in the middle. We're not loose and we're not, overly cautious, but that's been a tough one. It's some of my even closest friends who just can't hang out indoors right now. We're keeping the pod close. So, of course, the good news is that forces more ski tours and mountain bike rides.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess it all comes down to how do you adapt? Like, how do you, as a human being and as an entrepreneur and as a creative, how do you adapt in times when, you think it's going to be one way and then life deals you an unexpected card? And I think that's what the pandemic has been for everyone.
Well, and I think that's the 800-pound gorilla still in the room. We don't know what the future is. I mean, we have this previous life that we're used to, hopping on planes, not thinking twice about hitting the road. But now, even with the vaccine, I don't know that this is ever going to go away for maybe in Layla's lifetime, then they won't be worried about it. It'd be like the flu for her generation. But for us, as we transition through the fixes and the remedies and the vaccinations and all the different things, is that going to take 2 years? Is that going to take 20 years? It's an unclear future for us.
Yeah. I certainly don't claim to be an expert on that one.
No,
that's certainly.
I have no idea. Could be the vaccine will solve it all, and we'll be back to normal. That'd be great.
Yeah, I've definitely learned, and I think this comes from sort of mountain experience. You learn to adapt and cope with whatever situation you're in. You fly halfway around the world, and you plan to go on an expedition, and you plan for dry weather, but it rains the whole time, and you end up wearing a trash bag for 15 days. I think we're in that world. We're going to be wearing masks, and there's going to be certain protocols and lifestyle changes that we hadn't accounted for, but life will go on, and even our industry will go on. We're seeing that. We're slowly tiptoeing back into major production. 30, 40 people on a set, and everyone's getting COVID tests every day, and everyone's wearing masks and social distancing and hand sanitizing, and there's a new role on the crew. And it's the COVID compliance officer for the big shoot. Yeah. So I think that's one thing we've proven as humans. And I think certainly as storytellers, we're pretty adaptable people. Like, we'll persevere and we'll adapt and we'll do it as safely as it can possibly be done. Yeah. And I think as a society, we're making strides in the right direction with vaccinations. And
we're making progress.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for society, but also for the outdoor and photography, video storytelling industries.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. Yeah. So let's start with how you got introduced to outdoors and adventure.
Yeah, when I was a gymnast as a kid, grew up in the Mojave Desert, and when I was ironically about my daughter's age, 7 years old in second grade, my second grade teacher had an elite gymnast as a daughter, and she thought it might be good for me to try gymnastics. And I don't know if I was ever hooked on gymnastics, to be honest.
Really?
I think I just liked the challenge of it. Even early on, it was hard. It was scary and hard.
My sister did gymnastics. She worked her ass off at it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it was. And then it became a huge part of my life. Gosh, probably for, close to 10 years, maybe a little less than 10 years. I became a pretty competitive gymnast, competed at the state level, but became a pretty good athlete, really strong, learned discipline, trained hard 6 days a week, sometimes 3 or 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. And
was it close? Could you just go to your site? Because my sister had to get shuttled all around. And then as you get better, you get to go to the different club over here, which has a better coach. So was there a lot of commute time, so to speak?
We were in a pretty rural community, actually. We lived near the Antelope Valley. I lived in a tiny town called Leona Valley. And so it was 20 minutes to get to the gym.
Oh, man. Wow.
And my mom and dad, they shuttled me. And then there was this crazy moment where it was a nonprofit gym. There was I think it was just one gym in town. And at one point we were losing the coach, and my parents, because I was pretty involved, they offered to let the new coach, we hired a coach from Michigan. He was some stud, national team member, just out of college. Yep. He moved into our house and stayed with us. And Tony Lanzaro was his name. And then my world really changed. Then it was the coach lived in our house. So I went to the gym whenever Tony went to the gym. And I remember Tony rolled into town. He had Harley Davidson, like with the like high handlebars. And I was like 10 years old sitting on the back of his Harley going to the gym. And Tony was a badass. Tony was like, he was the real deal, took it to the next level. I got so fit. And it's definitely where I learned self-discipline and where I mastered the art of pushing hard and forcing myself to live outside of the comfort zone. And Tony went on to produce a couple of Olympians, like a couple of just, badass girls, like the girls team was incredible. But so Tony helped sculpt me into being this pretty solid athlete. And so then one day we had a pull-up contest in junior high school, and I did 35 pull-ups. and one of the school teachers took notice of me and invited me to go rock climbing. Bob Porter.
Oh, cool.
And that weekend, my brother and I went climbing. We went to the Needles of California, a little spot called Dome Rock. And that was it. Like, I was hooked. I loved every aspect of climbing, the mental, the physical, the cultural components, just the drive up to the Needles with two of my school teachers. It was Bob and George Egbert. And I was hooked. And then the next weekend, I borrowed my dad's camera because I wanted to make better pictures, tell better stories of those weekend adventures. And I realized right away that, my dad had a pretty nice camera, but my photos still sucked. And I realized, it's not about the camera. It's about, how you use it and how you think. And within a week, two passions were born: a passion for adventure, for climbing, and a passion for storytelling. And I really, in parallel, started to try to climb as much as I possibly could. And in the gym, I started ad hoc training for climbing. And then I started consuming as much literature on photography as I possibly could. And that was it. Like, I was on the track. Who I wouldn't have known then at I don't know what that was, 13 years old, that, gosh, over 30 years later, that would be my career.
Where did the storytelling part come from? Do you have any storytellers in your family?
I think my dad was always this oral storyteller. He loved yucking it up, like shooting the shit with his buddies in our kitchen or around a campfire. My dad was a scuba diver, big into back in the day when it was a little more Wild West off the Channel Islands.
Yeah, right. And you could actually bring home stuff to eat.
Exactly. I always joke that we used to eat like abalone, like it was ground beef. I mean, we had so much abalone.
Nice.
We had like hundreds of abalone shells in our backyard in buckets. But yeah, he and his buddies would every Friday after work, they would take off and they would, get on a dive boat out of Ventura or Oxnard, go out for 2 days, and they would come back with wild tales of adventure and some food to eat. And so I think I learned it from him. I mean, and he used to love telling stories about work. My dad was an educator. He was first a teacher at the high school level, then a counselor, and then vice principal, and then became an assistant superintendent at a pretty big school district in the Antelope Valley. And I think he was just a good storyteller. Like, he would come home and tell some crazy tale of a kid blowing up and the sheriff coming to school and the parents having to get arrested. Not always doom and gloom, but he could see the light. Like, he understood sort of the highlights of his day, and told even a better story of scuba diving. And so did his buddies. He had a couple of great friends. And I think that's where I learned it. But then it got taken to the next level. That's part of the climbing culture. I would get in the car with Bob Porter and George Egbert, my school teachers, and for 3 hours on the drive to the Needles, they would tell stories, and then we'd get back in the car and tell more stories. And I think you quickly learn. I don't know a climber that doesn't tell stories. I mean, I think that's part of the culture.
I don't think I know an outdoor person that doesn't tell stories. That's part of the deal, right?
That's right. That's right. Half of them are true, and the other half wildly exaggerated.
Right. And half of the story that they tell, there's only like maybe 20% of it that's true. The rest of it was embellished to the hilt.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so what was your first commercial shoot? I guess you shot the climbing that you did. So that's probably your first outdoor adventure activity, shooting. But what was your first commercial shoot?
I started to shoot a ton of climbing. That was my passion. And it's worth saying that I simultaneously was really trying to just become a better photographer. And so I started this parallel pursuit. I I started working at the local newspaper, taking on assignments for the Antelope Valley Press.
Okay.
And then in college, I went to the Modesto Bee. I got in 2 internships, 2 back-to-back summers. And so I was learning to tell stories, editorial storytelling for the newspaper. And then finally, I took a semester off from college and I drove around the Western United States photographing rock climbing and did 2 unsolicited submissions at the end of that semester off, one to Climbing Magazine and one to Patagonia, the clothing brand.
Oh, cool.
And much to my surprise, that both of them called me within a weekend.
Wow.
Purchased some pictures. And that was so unintentionally, or those 2 unsolicited submissions, those were really my first climbing photographs to get published. One was the cover of Climbing Magazine. It was like a photo of my super close friend Ricky Ashoy climbing in the tablelands right above your house.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other photo, I don't remember what it was, but it was a lifestyle photograph that published in the Patagonia catalog. And that was really the first commercial paycheck that I ever received. And then those 2 first experiences really opened the door to making money, becoming a professional photographer. I mean,
probably opened 2 doors. Yeah, probably opened the door for you because you could see that, hey, this is a thing. And then it also put you on the map so that other people.
Yeah, I mean, definitely those 2 brands. I started getting published in like every issue of Climbing Magazine.
Yeah.
And then eventually Rock and Ice Magazine. I had the cover, feature story inside. And then Patagonia became my real client because the commercial clients pay so much more, triple or quadruple what an editorial client pays. And Patagonia, I owe a lot to the Climbing Magazines and to James Sievert and Karen Bednorse at Patagonia at the time. And I started getting first spec assignments where they would pay for my film and they would pay for the trip. And then they would just license the pictures they wanted at Patagonia and some first assignments at Climbing and Rock and Ice. And then I think you're right. As my name just started appearing in magazines and in Patagonia catalogs, the phone just started ringing more frequently. And that opened the door to ad agencies calling and other outdoor brands. And it was a pretty steep incline. Like it went from I was a nobody who worked at a newspaper for 2 years to save up $3,000 to go on a road trip to the phone was blowing up. And I was having a hard time passing my classes in college because I was on the road.
Did you finish college?
Definitely. No, I never did. I'm 3 classes shy.
Oh, that's so close.
And it took a monumental Herculean battle to even get to that point. I was just the last 2 years of college. I think without exaggeration, I was probably I probably only attended 20% of my classes.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And to this day, I'm surprised that I pulled that off. But I know my dad would love one day for me to finish. I'm just not sure that's actually in the cards.
Well, in these days, it's a whole different world. I'm not sure the college degree holds as much cachet as it did back then. But
yeah.
So how did you get...
That said, just in case there's kids listening, I will say that I got a ton out of college.
Yeah.
I in no way would endorse. While I didn't finish, and I think the only obstacle that might create is one day I could envision myself being a college faculty member, and that might be a barrier. But who knows? Maybe I can twist someone's arm into making an exception. But I will say my 5 years in college definitely paved the way and opened the door to just life experience and exposure and intellectual conversation and opportunity that I don't think I would have found had I just gone straight out of high school into pursuing my passion.
Yeah, same for me. I stumbled into the recreation degree, and here I am 30 years on in an outdoor career. So I just think that college is one of many options as the world expands. Yeah, so
that's right.
How did you get involved with Nova Select? When did that start? Did that start back then, or was it a little later?
Yeah, there's a bit of a history there. Gosh, going on. I'm terrible with time, so I could be off by a decade.
We won't hold it to
direction.
That. We won't hold it.
20 plus years ago, in the early part of my career, I was just a prolific shooter. I was shooting all the time for the magazines and for Patagonia, and I owned all of that work. And so a big chunk of my income was relicensing the images that I had shot. So I might shoot it for Patagonia or for some brand, and then 2 years later, I would be licensing it again and again. And it was the tail end of the heyday of stock photography. I missed the true heyday. That was 20 years earlier, early 90s, late 90s. But I was making a lot of money, a big chunk of, I shouldn't say a lot of money, but a chunk of my income was stock photography. And at that point, my office was in my downstairs of my house in South Lake Tahoe. And I had one staff member, I had two staff members, and one of them was dedicated entirely to licensing stock photography. It was that large a business for us. And at one point, a photographer, an entrepreneur in the space, Jose Azel, reached out to me, or sent an email, I think, to a half dozen photographers. And he said he owned a company called Aurora Photos, which is a very high-end stock photo agency. It was founded by a few National Geographic photographers. And Jose had sent an email to a few of us, and he said, would you ever be interested in a brand that focused on outdoor adventure photography? And I was hit up for ideas like this all the time. And I responded while flying back to Reno. I had a laptop, and that was way before Wi-Fi on planes.
Right.
And I wrote a response, a real simple response. I didn't know Jose personally, but I said, I'd be interested, but I'd have to have some equity in the company. Otherwise, there's no point. And landed in Reno, sent, 100 emails that I'd written while I was on the plane.
Right.
And by the time I had walked out to my car, my cell phone was ringing, and it was Jose on the other line.
Wow.
And we had this long conversation about what an ideal outdoor adventure stock agency would look like. And then we did an experiment, and a few of us, we all kicked in some money and committed some of our photography to create a collection within Aurora. And that was Dan and Janine Patitucci, Brian Bailey, Scott Markowitz, and Greg Von Dorsten. We all were the founding members.
Scott was on the show a couple weeks ago, actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Scott's a great guy. Yeah, he's a fantastic guy, and an OG legend in this industry. Right. And so we all did this together, and it was an experiment. Some guys learned it was for them. Some guys learned it wasn't for them. And over time, I was the last man standing. It was the right fit for me. And it evolved over time into Jose and I were partners in Aurora Photos. And then we created an assignment agency that was run out of New York City that was originally called Aurora Novus. And meanwhile, the economy changed, and we watched kind of ups and downs in our industry and evolution of our industry. And anyhow, eventually it evolved into what it is today, which is Jose is no longer in the business, and Aurora Photos sold off the stock photography agency side, is no longer owned by Jose or me. And Novus Select, which is the assignment and production company side, is owned by four partners, three of my really close friends here in South Lake Tahoe. And that's Win Rugi, Lincoln Else, and Andy Mead. Okay. And we have an incredible staff. We have 13 full-time employees. Wow. And we have an office. Our office address, I love saying this, we're 1111 Ski Run Boulevard. So nice. We're easy to remember. Yeah. And so we're a production company / hybrid assignment agency. And we still have a foothold in the outdoor adventure space, but it's not the bulk of what we do. We found this sweet spot where a lot of our work is in kind of technology. We're working for Fortune 500 brands telling stories. And that's everyone from Apple to Google to Amazon to other startups. And yet we're all passionate storytellers. And so we're still working on documentary films, and we're still working on photo shoots that take us to wild outdoor adventure destinations. One thing that we've stumbled into is that, it's kind of hard to grow up and make enough money to pay a mortgage and save for your kids' college education exclusively working in the outdoor industry.
That's I think the outdoor industry is beginning to deal with that as an entity, because it comes up in a few conversations and you start to see articles about it lately. It's, I just had to go do something else.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I think it's for 3/4 of my career. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's great.
And I am who I am because of the outdoor industry.
Same here.
Many of my values I evolved and I established because of the outdoor industry, and it's still a huge part of who I am. But we also, I think, as partners at Novus, we figured out this hack, which is, we can still do the work we love, which is the outdoor adventure work is a portion of it, but we can also do highly stimulating, challenging work in larger industries where, there's one or two zeros added to every job.
Yeah, that's nice.
On the invoice.
Yeah.
And it feels like a really sweet spot right now. We have an incredible staff of people that I work with, a team there.
That's great.
I'm blown away every day how impressive our team is, each individual, but then as a team, how well we perform.
We'll link to that in the show notes. You guys have always produced some great work. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And I'll say, I appreciate you linking to us in the show notes. It's an interesting one when folks go to the Novus website. Yeah. Folks will scratch their heads a little bit. They'll be like, wait, I thought he said they don't do outdoor adventure work, but then you'll see our reel, or it's not our mainstay, but then you'll see our reel. And there's a lot of adventure work, and you'll see some of the examples of what we have done. And one of the interesting phenomena is when you're working in that Fortune 100, Fortune 500 world, a lot of the work we do, we're just not allowed to share or take credit for.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think there's a bit of as partners and as a staff, we've checked our ego at the door and said, that's okay. That's okay. I think we're growing. It's like we're being paid to grow. We're doing challenging work. We're super proud of a lot of the work that we do. It's just we have to, and we get paid well for it, but we have to own the fact that much of it we can't put on our website.
Well,
so
you're going to have to... but that's admirable, because that shows that you're committed to the craft as opposed to you're committed to the client, but it really doesn't matter who the client is. You're all about the story and the imagery and all those things, which I think is very admirable. You guys are going to tell a great story and capture great images. Doesn't matter if it's Novartis or the Bishop Chamber of Commerce. It's going to be what it is. You do what you do. That's great.
Wait, do we have a piece up there by Novartis, or did you?
I don't know. I just made that up.
Oh, that's really hilarious. We do work for Novartis.
Sorry, Novartis. I didn't know. I don't know anything.
Yeah, that's really funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, we flew to. I'm also that you saying Novartis. I think there's a little nugget of insight in that the industry's small. I've known you for a long time, and our paths. We've crossed paths many times, and we'll continue to cross paths. We've actively had an internship program at Novus over the last, first when it was Corey Rich Productions.
I remember that.
Our photos, Novus Select. We've had dozens and dozens of interns, paid internships over the years. And one of our interns, Bjorn, he was from Maine, but his mother was from Switzerland. And after he left us, he ended up with a job at Novartis in Switzerland and brought us in to do a pretty major production in Switzerland 2 years ago. And so the lesson in there is the network that you're building, those relationships. It's really important to maintain quality relationships with people, because you never know where it's going to lead. And in the best way, we laughed many times when we were in Switzerland working with Bjorn. Now our intern was our boss,
right?
And and there was that was not lost on him either. He found great humor and and joy in telling us what we needed to do and when.
That must have been fun. This podcast is a great example of that too. It's a collection of the people I've met over the years, and also the connections that they've made for me. So it's a great community, and it's amazing where it takes people. It starts in the outdoor biz, but look at for you guys, it connected you with someone like Novartis. You never know where the path is going to lead. So
and for me, in just to close that circle or that thread, the outdoor adventure piece of my life, I live it every day. I mean, in fact, I have to admit, I'm so glad that I looked at my calendar last night, because right before I went to bed, I noticed, I'm doing this podcast, because I in my brain was going to get up at 5:30 and go for a ski tour, and I'm glad. So I get a dose of that outdoor adventure every day living in Tahoe. It's why I live in Tahoe, and there's now it's true that I probably shoot an outdoor adventure picture every time I go out for an adventure, whether that's riding my bike, whether that's skiing, whether that's climbing. The difference is I don't always bring my Nikon. I think sometimes I'm truly out there for myself. And if I see something amazing, I shoot a picture with my iPhone, and it's more kind of a record shot, something that it's a memory. It's a quick moment. I'm not always trying to publish everything that I shoot.
Geez, we won't go down this path, but the new iPhone 12, holy cow.
It's pretty.
You might be able to publish some of those. That's amazing.
No, it's incredible. It's incredible. And but then I also find that I can, if I chose to, I could fill my year with exclusively, non-outdoor adventure storytelling. But I also know that's not the right balance for me, that I need to open my door so my dog can come into my office. But I make certain, it's one of the realities is I need to make sure that every year I'm doing a few expeditions or kind of adventure trips, and that I'm not exclusively telling stories which are, non-adventure. I need enough of that to feed my soul, both creatively and just from a creatively and even physically. I need to go out and suffer and get cold and wet and be uncomfortable for, a couple of weeks at a time.
Yeah, it's got to be some multi-day stuff. Yeah.
It just makes being home and working on projects that don't make me as uncomfortable physically more enjoyable.
We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor, Wolfgang Man and Beast. Spring is here, and I know you and your pup have been itching to get outside. Wolfgang Man and Beast celebrate the unique relationship between dogs and their people. They offer American-made leashes and collars for your pup using only the finest American leathers and textiles, plus a distinctive collection of t-shirts and hats for you. Built domestically and transported minimally, they will be replaced rarely. Visit theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/Wolfgang and get your pup a new leash or collar today. I see wet, slobbery kisses in your future. So is there a shoot in your past that was particularly epic? Either crazy weather, or I've heard some of your travel stories. Those were pretty crazy stories. Cranky subjects?
Yeah, not cranky subjects, I have to say.
That's cool.
Subjects, I've done a pretty good job of vetting cranky subjects before I even commit to going on the trip. And there aren't many, I have to say, in our industry.
Not many,
I think people have bad months or bad weeks on an expedition. But in general, look, I've spent a lot of time around many of the best adventure athletes, and they're pretty solid.
Yeah,
and even some of the folks that get bad raps that maybe were a little quirky.
A lot of times too, as the trip gets rough and the weather gets rough, those guys, their personalities get better. It's like that brings out all the stories come out, and they just get committed and they just grind it out.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't know what my sweet spot. I'm still at the core. I'm a rock climber. I just love the climbing culture. I love skiing. I love mountain biking, and I love kind of adventure trips. But climbing is as special as it gets. There's just a certain breed of human that loves climbing. And, to this day, I still light up when I'm, on a climbing trip and hanging on the side of a wall. This past summer, one amazing aspect of the pandemic was, again, I'm home. And a year ago, just over a year ago, pre-pandemic even, our dear friends Chris McNamara and his wife Victoria were at our house, and we're all gathered around our kitchen island. And I think Timmy O'Neill and his now wife Sarah O'Neill, we're joking, we always call them the O'Steels because she used to be Sarah Steele.
Oh, gotcha.
And we were all in our kitchen pre-pandemic talking about couples trips. And the ladies, Sarah, Victoria, and Marina, my wife, said, let's climb El Cap together. And the guys, of course, brushed it off like, that ain't happening. Humored them. And sure enough, in the middle of the pandemic, we went and did a 3 couples ascent of the Zodiac. And right six of us did the Zodiac. And it was awesome. Not that my job was exclusively to take pictures. My job was to make sure Marina was safe and watch over the whole party.
Sure.
But it just, a year has passed or had passed since I've been on El Cap. And it was a reminder of just I love that place. I love being in a big vertical environment and seeing the forest below and birds flying by and looking through my lens, looking through the camera and making compelling images. It's just it's a wonderful space to make images.
That's a cool place.
That has never gone away from me. It's still, that kind of lights the fire every time I start ascending a line or hanging in my harness with the camera strapped to my back.
Yeah, I think rafting on the river for me is that spot. I don't get to do it much anymore. We don't have whitewater here, and my knees are so hammered. I'm not sure I can anchor myself in a boat properly, but that's the place. Just same kind of thing. There's just action. There's water. There's moving things. There's things to deal with. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you get an assignment or when you go negotiate an assignment, how do you go about developing the story of the shoot? Do you have a recipe in mind ahead of time, or does it come up during the brainstorming session? How does that come about?
Yeah, I'm a really collaborative guy. When a project comes up, I think that's 80% of the reason I get hired. So there's a lot of guys, men and women, that can take a nice photo or shoot an interesting looking video.
Yeah.
But it's the approach and the story and the narrative and the logistics piece, I think, is honestly where maybe I shine the most. And maybe that's through now just years and years of experience. I always say that the reason I get hired is not because of what I can do. It's because of the mistakes I've already made and that I won't make again. It's really true. I feel like so often I get hired and it's, right at the beginning of the project, I can already identify the potential issues. And, that's what I end up talking about for the first couple of hours with the client is let's not do this because I can see this issue, and let's not do this because, and I think this is the best approach. And so it's that process and approach that I love the process. And in the process comes the story development. And it's a lot of brainstorming and talking and thinking. It's also the right team. That's the other. It's interesting, even in Hollywood, a director wins an Academy Award. The reality, and they do a good job of it when they stand up and give a speech. It's not them because they were key. They were the CEO of the film. But the reality is there were,
so many people
that are super smart and contributed a ton and made thousands of decisions along the way that made that film work and not become a total disaster. And I think in any project that I do, it's me that at the end of the day, I'm responsible for don't F it up. But there's also anywhere from 1 to, a dozen people who are equally as engaged and involved in making smart decisions at every turn. So I do think the secret is surrounding being committed. It's being truly focused and trying to think like chess. You're thinking a few moves ahead.
It's well put.
It's okay. If we do this, then what does that mean? What's the consequence? What's the benefit? And then it's surrounding yourself with the right team. It's not cutting corners. It's engaging the right people who have the right motivation, the right skill set, the right time availability, and then diving wholeheartedly into it. And that's the process. The truth is that is the process that I've been using for close to 30 years now. The beginning, it was mostly me, and I just did I put in all the blood, sweat, and tears. And then slowly over time, I had the ability to get other people involved and help. And it's not that you bring other people in, not to do the work for you. You bring other people in to do the pieces that they're better at, so that you can focus on the stuff that there's certain things that I'm the expert, and that's where my time should be going. My time should be going to the highest level story development and decision making, the visual aesthetic, some of the logistic stuff. Can I do it? Yeah, I probably can. Although I'll admit some of the day-to-day how to do it, I've been a little detached from that now for years, or the financial side of it. Could I do it?
No, I was going to say that's part of the team too, is make sure not only you have the right members, but you have the right members in the right assignment.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You can have the right guy, but like you say, you get some guy who's a great, digital editing guy, but you put him there schlepping bags. Yeah, the right guy, but wrong job.
Make sense. That's exactly right. It's the right people doing the right jobs. With kind of the right mental attitude. That's the other key is, I've definitely met folks that are really good at what they do, but bad attitude. And it's quickly they're off the team. I think Brian Bailey or Ace Cavalli said this to me years and years ago, 20 years ago. I don't know if you know Ace. Ace is another
met him a couple times,
legend in the adventure sports world. And Ace, gave me some kind of in passing, some advice, which is, look, Corey, people just want to work with people that they enjoy being around, like good people. And now I think I understood that then, but now I understand it's not just clients want to work with people that they enjoy being around. As I'm going to say a director or the project lead, I want to work with people that I enjoy being around, whether that's our full-time staff at Novus or contractors that we hire. The person that's good at what they do that's just a little off short.
Yeah, I can relate to that through some of the brand jobs I've had over the years. You get a great team and everything just hums along, and then you get to a place where this is good. But I remember when we were, and it's like any sports team, any, like you say, expedition team, it's all
chemistry.
The same.
It's chemistry.
And sometimes it's hard to read. You don't know. You get out there and you go, man, this is not quite right. You persevere, like you were talking earlier. So, So before your daughter walks in, let's talk about She's about to wake up, I think you said.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Tell us about your book, Stories Behind the Images. Came out in, I think you said 2019. What spawned that idea?
I think, yeah, end of 2019.
Okay,
It really came out of, I was putting together essays for my blog. And this goes back, 5-7 years ago, maybe even close to 10 years ago, when blogs were the thing. I found myself, I was working with Andrew Bisharat, who's a very talented writer and very close friend of mine. Andrew and I were usually on a monthly basis. Every now and again, we'd crank out 2 in a month, picking a photograph and then telling the story behind that image.
Oh, cool.
And gosh, it started out as just a fun project, and then we published like 80 of those essays over a few years. And they were anywhere from 500 words to 3,000 word essays. And they started out instructional. Usually it was like, how did I make this picture? And then we realized it just wasn't that fun to do how-to essays. The more I could tell stories of how I bumbled and fumbled, the mistakes I made, and the caricatures of the people in the photographs. One, it was way more fun to tell those stories. And two, just the engagement was significantly higher. And sometimes we got like hundreds of thousands of views on these essays. And then, of course, we started publishing on the blog, but then we would publish on social media, on Facebook at the time. And that got even more traffic. And we got to the point where we had published, I think it was something like 80 of these essays.
Wow.
And one day, Andrew and I looked at each other and we said, God, we've written a book.
Yeah.
Like here it is, but it's going to require editing.
Sure.
And so I decided, let's self-publish a book. And so we went down this road of Andrew and I edited those 80 essays down to 50-ish essays, sometimes combining themes and eliminating the less kind of interesting essays. And that was fun, but difficult process to get it tighter. And Lindsay Thompson, one of our producers at Novus, we went down to San Francisco and met with printing houses. And Lindsay and I hired a designer and we laid out the whole book. And then I remember I was flying to Siberia for an expedition. And it was a massive sequence of travel, and I was going to be gone for a month. And on the first flight, I needed to make the decision which printing house we were going to use. And I remember thinking to myself, what the fuck are we doing? Why are we going to publish this? This just sounds, write a check for $25,000 to print it. And two, we were going to have boxes of books and we were going to have to deal with distribution and marketing and a book tour. And so I remember I landed somewhere in the United States before the first international flight. And I called Lindsay and I said, Lindsay, pause, I pulled the e-brake. We have the book in hand. Let's send that book to a few publishers and just see if they want to take it off our hands.
Smart.
And so we sent it to Patagonia. They have a publishing division.
Yeah.
We sent it to the Mountaineers in Seattle. And then I had previously, 20 years earlier, published a book with Chronicle Books. And so we were committed to giving them the first right of refusal. So we sent it to Chronicle. And it was pretty awesome. I disappeared. Like, we had a sat phone, but we couldn't really, it was really to call home. And I went into the Siberian tundra for a month, 3 weeks. And then when I came out, I called Lindsay when I got to kind of the first landline.
Right.
And Lindsay said, Patagonia is super interested. The Mountaineers is super interested. And Chronicle's going to pass. They're not doing photo books. Wow. And long story short, we went with the Mountaineers, and it was the best decision that we made.
That's great.
And,
it's a great book.
Fantastic. Thanks. They did a great job. They probably evolved to 10%, like some layout changes and some copy edits. And but more importantly, we just had smart people. That's what they do every day.
Exactly. That was that was a great idea. Yeah.
And they had a distribution channel in place, and we helped. They helped us with the book tour. And I bet we did 25 or 30 stops around the country, kind of book tour stops, and that was super fun. And thank goodness it came out pre-COVID. I mean, I did. I think
you wouldn't have been able to travel. Yeah. One of the things you did. I don't remember where I saw this, but I saw a couple. Maybe you were on Facebook or something, but you were sitting with Leilana reading. She was reading, or she was picking the stories. That would be a great little thing. And if you guys out there listening want to check these out, I think they're on Facebook, but some of those little interactions that was cool. I love that.
Yeah, that was fun. That was right at the beginning of the pandemic. You asked, why did I do the book? The truth is I did the book because I'm planning to live until I'm 100, but if I got hit by a bus, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I wanted Layla to have
that's cool.
Some of these stories. And I hope it makes some other people happy along the way and brings joy to their life. But I really wanted this to exist for Layla.
Yeah, that was very cool.
And that was pretty fun at the beginning of the pandemic. I just impromptu started sitting down and reading her a chapter.
Yeah. And she got to pick the chapter, right? Because I remember a couple times you looked at it and go, really? That's the one you're going to pick?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That was pretty funny. So
I wish I would have stuck to that and finished the book, but then loosened up a little with the pandemic.
Yeah, you can get back to it. Do one a month or something. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the photo game, the storytelling game?
Yeah, I think about this frequently.
I bet you get asked a lot.
Yeah, it just struck me recently that I think so often we look at the past, what worked, what are the lessons that we can learn from the past, and how has the industry worked. And of course, you should do that. You should look at what makes a great photographer, a great director, a great storyteller, understand the craft. But in terms of, and understand what worked from a business perspective, but never feel confined by what worked in the past. I mean, I think we're truly living in like the golden age of storytelling. It's right now. It's right now. You're no longer beholden to a publisher that you're begging them to publish your photographs. You are the publisher. You own your channel. You
have so many channels, account. Right? Whether it's podcasting, photography, books, just do your thing. That's well said. I like that.
And it's be innovative. It's your job. I don't have the answer, but it's that 20-year-old kid that's coming out of college or dropping out of college right now to drive around in their Sprinter van and take pictures and shoot films of climbing. Your career is not going to evolve the same way that mine did. I'm old school now. I was this guy that shot film and had images published in print magazines. The 20-year-old coming out of college right now, they're going to be leveraging the internet. They're going to be leveraging platforms like Instagram and Facebook, and they're going to be doing podcasts, and they're going to be creating whatever the next iteration of a blog is or a zine. And it's maybe I'm already using the wrong, and you're going to be shooting in VR or using venues on Facebook
with your phone. Some of the stuff these guys are creating with the phone. Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And it's going to be more immediate. And you're going to figure out how to monetize all of these platforms, and you're going to monetize your audience, and I don't have the answers, but I definitely, I recognize that this is an incredible moment in time from a business standpoint and from a selling standpoint, where the power has never been more in the hands of the content creator than today. This is it. This is the moment. Your podcast, you own it. You're not beholden to anyone. You do whatever you want with that podcast. You can put as much energy or as little energy into this podcast and growing it and monetizing it. And so I think that's the advice. It's, of course, study the past, but it's your mission to figure out what the future is going to look like. And I don't think the future has ever been brighter from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah. And I say this a lot on the show, and people are probably tired of hearing me repeat this phrase, but if you scratch your own itch, because if you like it, I guarantee you there are at least 1,000 more people that like it. I'm going to reference the Kevin Kelly article on 1,000 True Fans. And these days, if there's 1,000, there's probably 1,000 more of those. So, do what you want to do and pick the channel, like you say. That's great advice. I love that. Yeah. As we go to wrap here, if you had a huge banner to hang up in front of one of the trade shows, we've all been to these trade shows, hopefully we'll go again. What would it say?
What would a banner say? That's,
Or we can go to a different, how about?
Yeah. I think it would be put your money and time in the things that you believe in. And I think put your money and time where your mouth is. I think there's, at whatever level you can do that, I think for me, I care deeply about being a steward of our environment and protecting our wild places. I also care deeply about, now I have a little girl, and I care deeply about our community and providing opportunity for kids that don't have as much as our daughter has. And it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to walk the talk,
support it,
and to put money into the things that you believe in, and to put your time into the things that you believe in. And it's a lesson I learned years ago. I was invited to be on the Access Fund board of directors. And I learned, it was a really pivotal experience, actually. I learned what it meant to be a steward and to be philanthropic and to actually really help make change. And I feel like now, that was at least 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And now I still don't consider myself an adult, but I look in the mirror and I realize, damn, I've somehow become an adult.
Right.
But that's it. It's put your money in your time where your mouth is. Walk the talk.
I like it. Well said. Corey, thanks for the time. It's been great catching up with you. I look forward to doing it over a beer one of these days. And
hey, my pleasure. Really good to catch up. And next time we're barreling down 395, I'll reach out.
Yeah, we'll go to the Mountain Rambler Brewery. Sounds good.
Yeah,
cool.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rick. Really great to catch up.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theoutdoorbizpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes with links to everything we talked about and more. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or spread the word and tell a friend about the show. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week. And thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Rick Saez.